Consider for a moment the possibility that everything you believe about success and failure might be completely wrong. That every victory in your life, every crushing defeat, every moment of joy and every period of suffering were not accidents of fate, but direct consequences of invisible laws that you either followed or broke, without even knowing they existed. Why is it that some people seem to attract opportunities like magnets, while others, just as talented and hardworking, constantly struggle against invisible currents? Why do certain decisions that seem perfectly logical end in disaster, while others, apparently impulsive, lead to extraordinary transformation? The answer has been in front of you for millennia, hidden in ancient texts most people dismiss as mere esoteric philosophy. But what if I told you these aren't just abstract ideas, they're the instruction manual for reality itself? That every single phenomenon in your life, from the way you connect with others to the way money flows toward you, is just a specific case of 7 universal laws that govern everything that exists. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to vibrate differently? How certain words, spoken at just the right moment, can completely change the course of a conversation, a relationship, a career. There's something operating behind the veil of everyday reality. Something the ancient Hermeticists discovered and encoded into principles that can be understood and applied by anyone willing to look beyond appearances. The most unsettling part is realizing that you're already using these laws. The question isn't whether they work, they always work. The real question is whether you're aware of them, or if you'll continue being just a pawn in a game whose rules you've never learned to read. Every unlearned lesson in your life is a sentence to repeat the same pattern until you finally understand the principle behind it. But when you do, when you truly see the hidden anatomy of the universe, things begin to change. My name is Noah, and this is the Hermes Code channel. Here, I show you how to put the principles of Hermeticism into practice. Let's keep going. The problem that keeps us trapped isn't a lack of knowledge. It's the illusion that we're awake, when in reality we live in a state of spiritual sleepwalking. Carl Jung called it the collective unconscious, but Hermeticists knew this long before. We dwell in the mind of the all, and our perception of reality is just a distorted fragment of a much greater consciousness. Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary Egyptian sage, encoded this wisdom in the Emerald Tablet, which was later explained in more accessible terms in the 1930s through the Kybalion, not as mere philosophy, but as a practical map of reality. What he understood, and what modern neuroscience confirms, is that our experience of life is built on layers of conditioning that operate below the threshold of consciousness. We're like fish that can't see the water they swim in. The medieval alchemist Paracelsus grasped exactly what the principle of correspondence means when it says, "As above, so below. As within, so without." This isn't just a vague or poetic phrase. It's a precise observation of how patterns repeat across every level of existence. When you're at war within yourself, your outer world mirrors that chaos. When your mind is disordered, your material life follows suit. That's not a coincidence. It's a universal law in motion. Taimni, in his studies on the science of yoga and self-culture, demonstrated how our states of consciousness quite literally create our experiential reality. But here's what keeps us stuck. We believe we're victims of our circumstances when in truth, we're the unconscious creators of them. We live like sleepwalkers, reacting to a world we ourselves are constantly generating through our mental, emotional, and energetic patterns. Cultural conditioning teaches us to look for solutions on the surface level of life, changing jobs, relationships, moving to new places, without realizing we're just rearranging furniture in the same mental room. It's like trying to change your reflection in the mirror by moving the mirror, when the real issue lies in the position of the one who's looking. The ancient alchemists understood the power of true transmutation. They used metaphors to avoid persecution, but at their core, these alchemists sought to transmute unconsciousness into awareness. They knew there are laws operating in invisible dimensions of reality. Laws that govern how thoughts become things, how intentions manifest as experiences, how vibration determines attraction. The deeper problem is that these laws never stop operating. They're like gravity. They work whether you believe in them or not. The difference is, when you ignore gravity, you simply fall. But when you ignore the Hermetic laws, you end up living an entire life of repetitive patterns, toxic relationships, and self-sabotaging cycles that seem to come out of nowhere, but are actually the mathematical manifestations of principles you never learned to recognize. And then, my friends, problem after problem begins to pile up. Your life spirals into chaos, and you find yourself asking what you did wrong. The most devastating consequence of living unconsciously of these laws is that you become a prisoner of a universe you are creating yourself, but you can't see how you're doing it. It's like being trapped in a house of mirrors where each reflection seems like a separate reality, when in fact they're all projections of a single source. Look at your life through this lens. How many times have you encountered exactly the kind of person who confirms your worst expectations about relationships? How many times have opportunities appeared out of nowhere, precisely when you were in an elevated mental state? This isn't luck or misfortune, it's the universe responding precisely to your vibrational address, as the Hermetists called our dominant energetic frequency. Modern neuroplasticity confirms what the ancients already knew. Your brain literally reconstructs your reality based on the patterns you reinforce. But here's what science doesn't fully grasp yet. This restructuring doesn't just happen on the neural level, it extends to the very fabric of the reality around you. You're not just changing your perception, you're altering your experience through laws that operate beyond the physical. Confirmation bias is not just a cognitive error, it's a manifestation of the principle of correspondence. What's in your mind corresponds with what appears in your life. If you carry an internal narrative of scarcity, the world conspires to confirm that narrative. If you vibrate at the frequency of abundance, opportunities start appearing in ways that seem impossible to explain through conventional logic. But the most subtle trap is that this happens so gradually you don't notice. It's like being in a drifting boat. You don't feel the movement because you're moving along with it. Your relationships begin to reflect your unresolved internal patterns. Your financial situation mirrors your relationship with value and worthiness. Your physical health manifests your emotional conflicts. And because it happens organically, over time, you attribute it all to external circumstances. The most tragic consequence is that you can go through your entire life being extremely disciplined, hardworking, and well-intentioned, yet continuously sabotaging your own efforts because you're operating against laws you don't understand. It's like trying to swim against an invisible current. You exert yourself immensely but keep getting carried in the opposite direction of your conscious destination. Cultural conditioning teaches us that change requires brute force, that success comes only through struggle against resistance. But the Hermetists discovered something revolutionary. When you align your actions with universal principles, resistance disappears. In other words, you come into resonance with higher energies and life becomes fluid, synchronized, almost magical in its elegance of manifestation. But right now, you're probably asking yourself, so how do I live according to these laws and free myself from all this? The rebellion against this state of consciousness doesn't come through more effort, but through a radical shift in perspective that challenges everything you've been taught about how reality works. It's time to stop trying to fix effects and start working with causes, at the level where they truly operate. The first act of rebellion is recognizing that you're not a victim of circumstances, but rather their unconscious architect. This isn't sugary self-help philosophy, it's a devastatingly powerful responsibility. This mindset brings responsibility back to you and leads you to seek states of consciousness that move you to act and change your reality. When you truly understand that your current life is a mathematical manifestation of your dominant mental, emotional, and energetic patterns, you're faced with a terrifying and liberating choice. Continue being an unconscious prisoner or become a conscious creator. Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just a brilliant artist. He was a practical hermetist who understood the principle of correspondence. He knew that to create masterpieces in the physical world, he first had to bring order to the chaos in his mind. His works weren't just artistic expressions, but demonstrations of how a mind aligned with universal principles can manifest the impossible in material reality. Nikola Tesla, another unconscious practitioner of these principles, said he saw his inventions complete in his mind before physically building them. He didn't try to force innovation. He tuned into frequencies of knowledge that already existed in the universal field of consciousness. Tesla intuitively understood that the universe's vibration, and by aligning his own mental vibration with the correct frequencies, he could download information that seemed to come from the future. And if you ask me what the most powerful liberation technique is for all this, although I'm not fond of the words technique or formula, I'd say this as a piece of advice. Start seeing every event in your life not as something that happens to you, but as something that reveals the principle you are unconsciously operating under. That toxic relationship? Show me the internal pattern of self-punishment it's mirroring. That stressful financial situation? Reveal to me your subconscious relationship with abundance and worthiness. That recurring conflict at work? Expose the power imbalance that first exists within you. When you develop this Hermetic vision, with the ability to observe the universal laws operating through the particular events of your life, you become an existential investigator of yourself. Every problem becomes an opportunity to identify which principle you're transgressing, and every success reveals which law you instinctively obeyed. The true rebellion is realizing that you have the power to rewrite the fundamental equations of your existence. Not by changing the external world first, but by transforming the internal causal patterns that generate your experiential reality. It's like discovering that you are simultaneously the prisoner, the jailer, and the key to the prison. If I could summarize everything that has been said so far in one sentence, it would be this. The 7 Hermetic principles are not hollow knowledge about ancient philosophy. They are the operational laws of consciousness itself, the source code of manifested reality. And you, whether you like it or not, are already an unconscious master of these laws. The principle of mentalism reveals that everything you experience is first born as a mental form before it materializes. Your relationship, your career, your physical health, all began as a pattern in the subtle plane of the mind before descending through the emotional and energetic planes until becoming concrete. You're not just living a life, you're inhabiting a mental construction that you yourself designed, unaware of being the architect. The principle of correspondence shows why an ordered mind inevitably creates an ordered life. When you move on one plane of existence, an equivalent tendency manifests in all other planes. That's why the wise have always focused on inner transformation. They knew that authentic changes on the mental plane automatically generate corresponding transformations in material reality. The principle of vibration goes even deeper. Your identity is not composed of your name or your story. It is your vibrational address, the specific frequency at which your consciousness habitually resonates. People, opportunities, and circumstances that vibrate in harmonic frequencies are naturally drawn into your life, while those in dissonant frequencies drift away or create friction. You're not just living. You're constantly transmitting a signal that determines what enters your experiential reality. The principle of polarity is liberating. Apparent opposites are actually variations of the same thing on different vibrational gradients. This means you can transmute fear into courage, poverty into abundance, confusion into clarity, not by fighting them, but by accelerating your vibration until you reach the opposite pole of the same spectrum. It's practical alchemy, transformation through frequency, not force. The principle of rhythm explains why all excesses exact an equivalent toll and why life becomes stuck when you drift away from the center. Like points on a wheel, the farther you are from the center of balance, the more violent the movement you experience. Wisdom is not avoiding movement, but finding that still center within you, the point of serenity from which you can observe life's oscillations without being dragged by them. The principle of causality is perhaps the one that brings you the greatest responsibility. You are constantly generating the causes for the experiences you will live in the future. The unconscious man is hostage to these causes like a leaf in the wind, but the conscious man can neutralize undesirable causes and intentionally generate the causes for the experiences he wishes to create. The principle of gender reveals that you simultaneously possess the capacity to generate in the physical plane, regenerate in the mental plane, and create in the spiritual plane. You are not just a body trying to survive. You are a multidimensional creative force capable of consciously operating across multiple levels of reality. And finally, I need you to understand that you were never a victim of circumstance. You have always been the unconscious operator of these universal laws which are precise and immutable. Now that you know the laws, shift your focus and have the courage to consciously assume the power that has always been yours. Thank you for your time and for staying with me until the end. My name is Noah, and this was my contribution for today.